Hey everybody, this is Perch, and answering another viewer message here. This one actually was sent back in September, and very thankfully, the poster resent it to me. So it's sick of me not getting to my email. They moved up to the top of the stack. Very clever, smart thing to do. Well done. All behind that. So this poster basically, this viewer writes this. The mail is titled "Civil War Between Old Fans versus New Fans." I'm liking this question already because I like it's not the old classic, old fans versus creators or publishers, but this is old fans versus new fans. I think this is an interesting and under talked about topic. So let's see what question we got here. Hello Perch, big fan of your YouTube channel. I am from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Very nice place. Hope that area is bouncing back. And I've been a comic reader for almost 15 years. That I'm the administrator and moderator of several comic Facebook groups. And I don't know if you want to be identified here, but there's a bunch going on. And if you let me know, I'll be happy to put those in the description. I'm at least a member of two of these, I think. But, always those groups are fun. The question goes, over the years, I've had new readers ask me or my colleagues on the groups jumping off point for comics to start. Yet we've had multiple instances where other members, usually old readers, enter the comic section and recommend older stories, while in instances getting into fights with readers that prefer or recommend new comics for their personal. This has led to interventions, and these matters from muting to removing the people off that continue bad behavior in violation of group rules. That's being a moderator of a group sucks. I mean, because people naturally kind of get inflamed with their passions, and there's somebody is always going to have a bad day. And if you get two people having a bad day, in this case, I mean, like if you get the moderator having a bad day and the posters having a bad day, then people can get perma-blocked and other stuff, and it's that they wouldn't normally if one of those people was more relaxed. That is just it's a thankless job. Anyway, the mail continues. We love both the old and new comics, yet lately we've had discussions over this odd civil war of old fans versus new fans, or people that prefer the old comics or new comics, usually from the big two. My question is, could this behavior of comic readers get any worse as the years continue, or will this be a phase in history? I don't know that it gets worse. I think it's pretty bad now, to be honest. And, there's a bunch of ways to look at this. The challenge is that both sides in this case, older fans and newer fans, they have some legitimate beefs with the other. And I'll give you an example of two arguments that many of these people use against each other that are truthful. And I'll give you a couple that are not. But truthful one is, older fans will say that the newer fans have no interest in going in and looking at the history. And you can't, the comic by its nature involves history. It involves a lot of background development, things that made the character what they are, sometimes uncomfortable stuff. I know the Captain Marvel fan groups don't love the history of her, giving birth to an alien that she then went off and had a relationship with and was mind controlled by. Is Avengers 200, right? It's creepy and weird. And, Disney's not going to adapt that into a movie. But it is part of her history. And I think in a weird way, if you just kind of memory hole that, if you take it away, it takes away a depth of her character, even though it was terrible. I mean, it's a terrible story. I've never been anybody who's held up that story as like, this was a great moment in Carol's life. However, if you just remove it, you remove a tragedy and something she had to claw back from, even if the companies themselves kind of ignored it to a large extent. I don't think, this is why I don't think it's a good idea to avoid that. So a lot of old comic readers, they will make the comment correctly that the new comic readers seem disinterested and dismissive about the past. And in many cases, people do. At the same time, the new comic readers, I think accurately, have made the point that the older comic readers are unwilling to move on from the stories they like best. Meaning there's an era, you see this with X-Men a lot, where people are like, well, the Claremont that did, the Dark Phoenix saga and Days of Future Past, it was the best Claremont. Claremont burned, and nothing is ever going to get better than that. And I don't like any of the new stuff. And this is at its best. You've heard that probably a lot too. Now, if that's your point of view, I think you're missing out, at least for me, on what was the best X-Men run, which would come many years later with the whole Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants kind of time frame. I thought stuff was amazing. And then there's been stories since. I mean, there's been clips of stories that I've enjoyed, throughout the whole thing. I did enjoy House of X Powers of 10. I thought that was a fun story. If you ignore all the future or all the current and only kind of stick with that Claremont Byrne era, you're going to miss out on a lot of good stuff. And I think that's a truthful statement. At the same time, I think that one of the statements that I think is not true, or at least not entirely true. Like if your Snopes was, it would be mostly false, but it's not 100% false. And that's that older comic fans will often say newer comic fans are not even reading the comics. And this is a tough one because I don't believe that in this you have to gatekeep things by saying, you have to read a certain amount of comics before I'll pay attention to you. People who do that are douchebags. But it is true that several new comic fans are coming at it having read, maybe one comic, have basically just watched the movies. And you saw this in the past. You saw this with the X-Men cartoon. You've seen this with the X-Men movies. Now you're seeing it with kind of more of social media often brings people to comics who are just completely uninformed about the comics. And it's a delicate situation because you have somebody who got very, very excited about a movie, is trying to claim an identity for themselves and kind of grow into it. But they really don't have any knowledge. So they've probably got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of insecurity about where they're at. And so if they're met by a bunch of older fans going, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a new fan, what are you talking? All this stuff is crap. It's just going to create an increasing amount of fights. I do think that, I think everybody has some responsibility here. I think the older comic fans do have a responsibility to at least come to grips with the fact that, yes, some of their favorite stories may be in the past. Absolutely. And the past is behind us. That doesn't naturally mean all the new comics are crap. I think some of the newer fans have to acknowledge that the past, even if you think it's cringy or you don't like it, it still happened. And you can't just erase it and pretend. I think that's equally wrong. And I think that's where a lot of the civil war this writer's talking about comes down to that moment. I wish everybody would just lighten up a little bit. There's hundreds of thousands of stories out there in comics. Everybody should have their different kind of favorite moments and excitement. There's enough material out there for that. And if we're trying to force everything into, nope, there's just these 10 moments and these are the 10 best moments. I mean, I've done the reaction videos to enough lists, these listicle articles on CBR and Newsarama and everything, and they're almost always crap. And the stuff they pull out is nonsense. But if that's what that poster, that reader believes or wants, cool. All that tells me is there's a lot of different moments to enjoy about comics. And I may disagree with absolutely nothing that this person says, but, and it's okay for me to do that. There's not one right answer. I think that, and I think I've avoided mentioning it till now, but it's worth saying. Yeah, social media and just general polarization and people bitching at each other about politics and other things also plays into all this. Definitely there's people who are, this ideology, that ideology, and that plays in as well. It's like right now, so much is defined by, do you like Trump or do you dislike Trump? And the fact that those two sides kind of have spread into everything from sports to entertainment to, yes, comics. That just means this civil war keeps going and never's over. But if you're a new comic fan, I will say that having a reluctance in looking into the past, you are basically cutting out for yourself thousands of amazing comics, just thousands. You're removing entertainment from yourself if you're not willing to go back and look at the old stuff. If you're an older fan, granted, you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to stay right here. I'm not getting into the new stuff, staying with back issues, and this is where I'm at. And, you still have, you kind of get to be the winner in that, in that battle because you still have hundreds of thousands of comics to read, even if you stop paying attention to the new stuff. But I will say, new stuff does crop up for the big two, for indies. And, you shouldn't ignore it. You shouldn't have yourself closed off simply because it's current and modern. But what about you, the person listening to this? Are you consider yourself an old fan, a new fan? Have you seen these fights? What's your advice to those two groups of, I guess it's worth mentioning. In a lot of cases, these people don't want to understand each other. They like to fight.